The m4190 is a really fun and pretty competitive tank right now in World of Tanks. It's mainly known for the HE option it has, which it brings a 320 alpha and 102 millimeters of penetration. And in context of tier 8, that may not sound like a crazy amount, but out of a light tank, you're talking about rolling upwards of 350, 360 alpha damage out of a light tank, and you're going to be able to hit some of the more competitive vehicles with that at the tier. The Barask, the ELC Even 90, all of these tanks are going to be able to go through frontally with HE rounds, and that allows you to pull off some pretty aggressive maneuvers, especially against the meta of tier 8, which is, fast, light tanks with larger guns. If you can outspot them and outmaneuver them, then you're often able to pull off some good trades and some good hit and runs with that, 320 alpha. For starters, let's compare it to some of the more competitive tanks at the tier. Well, first, let's see what we're looking at for tier 8 light tanks here. You can see by win rate at the top, the EBR, let's exclude that, not a normal light tank. The ELC and the LT432 are the usual suspects at the top of the win rate. The m4190 kind of appears through the middle. Obviously, all players have access to it through the bond store. If you can save up, through a couple of well-deserved rewards, you can have access to this. Towards the bottom, you have your, tech tree tanks that really aren't doing so well right now. The tech tree tanks are kind of a tough spot at tier 8. They have to compete with all the premiums, and it's really hard for them to stay up to date. We're looking at the m4190, the ELC, the LT432, and the WZ132, all pretty competitive tanks at the tier 8 level. I would say these two being the most so. The WZ, obviously, out of the tech tree, still being competitive is very alluring. But if you don't want to make the grind there, you can take the m4190. So let's see. The m4190 brings great damage per minute compared to the other three. The ELC obviously brings its autoloader, so you can excuse it for that. But where it also takes an interesting advantage is the penetration statistic. Now, the WZ132 does beat it out in the penetration, but we will see that it brings APCR as premium. And while, yes, it has 225 millimeters of premium pen, we're going to look at the m4190 here and see that the heat rounds bring 250. And not only is that 25 more millimeters of penetration, big whoop, right? Heat rounds mean that this tank is somewhat uniquely immune to the light tank issue of additional penetration fall off at distance. Not many people know this, but light tanks are actually victim to an extra penetration decrease at distance, which means that APCR rounds, AP rounds, like the ELC are firing. ELC is firing APCR premium. The LT432 is firing AP premium, actually. APCR is standard, kind of a weird one. Those are going to be victim to an extra, I think, 20% penetration fall off at distance. The m4190 is going to keep that 250 millimeters of pen at distance, which makes it a somewhat competent sniper, and you can really pull some good stuff off. Not only do you have that extra distance, but you're going to have the 85 degrees of penetration ability. Instead of ricocheting off sheer surfaces, the heat is going to go through. So the heat is a tool that's not kind of to be understated with the m4190. You can really do some good stuff with that. Elsewhere, your alpha damage outtrades both the Even 90 and the LT432, although the Even 90, again, autoloader, you're going to be able to do 660 damage in a burst if you can pull it. The LT432, however, has a phenomenal rate of fire, which scales really well with crew skill, gun rammer, perks. The WZ is also pulling a similar figure on damage, 250 versus 240, slightly better alpha. However, shooting at the WZ, you might have an opportunity to use those HE rounds, so we'll see how this stacks up using that. Further down, shell velocity. Obviously, you're competing against a couple of tanks shooting APCR here. A little difficult to compete in shell velocity, especially when you're thinking about those HE rounds and the heat rounds. You're going to have to lead your shots pretty considerably with the m4190. The ammo is not a problem here. The 46 allows you to take a good mix of those 3 rounds, which you're going to want to take because you can turn a profit in this tank if you're playing it well, and not, spamming your heat. You're going to turn a pretty decent profit. Gun handling wise, this tank kind of separates itself a little bit. Great aim time, good accuracy for the 90mm gun attached to it. You're hitting harder than the rest of the tanks here, barring the WZ-132 obviously. Your dispersion values are pretty good. If you want to take a gun rammer on this, or a vertical stabilizer on this tank, I wouldn't blame you. I think, if you want a firepower setup, if you're playing on a more close map and you want to take a vertical stabilizer, that's fine. The turret traverse values are good. The tank traverse and moving values are not as good as their competition. The LT-432 is notoriously, the gun is on rails as you're moving. But you can hit moving shots with this. That isn't to say that's impossible. I would certainly invest in Snapshot for your crew and Smooth Ride. It'll make it just that much better. Good gun handling overall, not great. Onto mobility. You have a super competitive forward speed compared to the other tanks of the tier, especially that WZ. Means you're going to be able to get that 240 alpha damage into different positions a little quicker. And the reverse speed is also super competitive, allowing you to pull back out of positions good. That being said, the engine power does leave a little bit to be desired on this tank. You're not going to shift like an LT-432 or the WZ, which leads me to suggest taking some of the field mods on this tank. Onto that later, but good terrain resistances, good turret traverse, good tank traverse. It's a mobile tank. You'll be able to move around pretty well. Armor, none to speak of. If tanks have intuition, they're likely to shoot HE at you. Good players are going to certainly shoot HE at you. Bad players, maybe not so much, but you will be victim to the light tank. HE spam. You're not an LT-432. Nothing is. It's a shit show that this tank has 160mm of frontal turret armor. You just have to compete with it. It is what it is. WZ, obviously, no armor as well. Nothing really has armor at this tier other than the LT-432. Now onto camo. This tank is not a phenomenal spotting tank camo-wise. It has great view range, super competitive compared to the other 3 in this tier, but the camo certainly leaves something to be desired. You're going to need camo on your crew. You are going to need a exhaust system, preferably Bounty or Bond exhaust system on this tank to try to make up for that. Personally, I'm taking an improved Bounty exhaust and a Bond set of coated optics on this tank. And really, that is making me kind of even the playing field with ELCs. I have been able to outspot some poorer equipped ELCs in this tank when set up correctly. I have camouflage on my crew. I haven't gotten Brothers in Arms. No, I do have Brothers in Arms. That's not true. I have Brothers in Arms, camouflage on this tank, and it's working out very well for the camouflage. It comes with a paint job equipped, actually. So you can do some good spotting things with this tank. That being said, if you see an ELC is on the team, I would not recommend, or an LT-432 for that matter, I would not recommend trying your luck per se, against that tank spotting wise. If you happen to outspot it, good on ya. Don't rely on something like that. That's a very poor strategy with the M41. You're looking to, kind of bridge the gap between a light and a medium. Like I said, you're not going to be a passive scout. You're not going to hide in a bush the whole game and be able to, do 9K spotting. But you are going to be able to pump out damage, kind of play the assassin role, just do damage here and there with your HE shells and your heat shells. Outspot mediums and some other lights. And really work your view range and ammunition variability here. So back to the tank. Looking at the M41, it's really all about maximizing that mobility and the ammunition capability and the spotting capability. So looking at equipment, again, like I said, let's certainly invest in a commander's vision system here. Way too strong to not take. You're going to need that in every tier 8 light tank. After that, let's look at a low noise exhaust system for sure. Again, like I said, 6% concealment is good, but if you can get an improved bounty system, you're going to be looking at 9%. That's really going to be a difference maker for you. You're changing from, 20% camo to all of a sudden 23% camo. That's not a small difference. You're really going to want that. And here, if you're going to say you want to take just stock optics, that's fine. I had a pair of Bond optics lying around. I thought, what better tank to throw it on, so I did. I threw it on my M41 here. Makes a pretty substantial difference of 15 meters view range. If you want to do that, I would recommend it. It really does allow you to outspot some of those ELCs, some of the LT432s that are less equipped for spotting in that particular game. And perks wise, you have the camouflage paint bonus here, Brothers in Arms for sure, concealment, and if you're pulling that concealment in Brothers in Arms, look at that. I mean, 38% camo is nothing to laugh at. That's a pretty substantial amount there. And that in partnership with, I do have recon on this tank, and I do have situational awareness. You're really going to be able to pull a substantial amount of view range. That's nothing to laugh at. You are going to outspot almost everything at the tier with that amount of view range, especially if they're shooting. If you're taking a premium consumable on this tank, that scales super well with everything else. But let's say you're free to play like me. Let's lose the premium consumable and play this tank in a different way. Directives, again, I could see a exhaust directive here, but with the field mods, in terms of the field mods, I think the valve tuning setup is a very interesting one, because you can take the top forward speed one and you will reach that speed after a while, but I've found myself sacrificing the 2 kilometers an hour top speed in order to gain that, 20 horsepower advantage, just because it does make a difference in the power to weight. You're noticeably quicker in this tank when you take the 3% engine power on the valves tuning. That being said, the loading mechanism, you're definitely taking reload time here, need that. The dispersion, you're not so concerned about that in the light tank, especially when you can take things like snapshot, things like smooth ride, and improve the dispersion values to the point where it's less influential than you would think, that actual accuracy there. We're certainly going to take top reverse speed on the 5th field mod. You're going to get up to 27 there. That's really good, actually. That's really competitive at tier 8. And here, you're going to take the firepower slot. I would have to think that on a second loadout, you're going to be taking, for city maps, a bounty, or excuse me, not a bounty rammer. You don't need that if you have the firepower slot. You're certainly going to be taking a gun rammer, and you are certainly going to be taking a set of vertical stabilizers here. Yes. Certainly going to be taking a set of vertical stabilizers here. This will get the dispersion really competitive on this tank, and you'll really be able to make the ammunition work. Now with this setup here, you're looking at 2700 DPM. That is pretty voracious for a light tank. And God forbid you start shooting at something light, 320 alpha at a 5-second reload is really menacing. 102 millimeters of penetration, you're going to go through a lot with that. Here at Tomato GG, you can see this is the list of the most played tanks at tier 8 in the last 60 days. And if you're imagining 102 millimeters of penetration with 3700 DPM here, you're going through almost everything in the top 15 most played tanks at tier 8. Scorpion G, SU-130, the Barask, the ELC, down through the TVP, the AMBT, the Scorpion, the Borsig, the UDES, almost everything here you're carving up with that type of penetration, and everything that you can't go through frontally, 103 millimeters almost certainly works from the side. So, against some of the meta tanks of this tier, you're going to be able to really make some interesting stuff happen. That being said, you have to be careful because you are an 1100 hit point vehicle. It's going to be difficult to trade at that type of HP, but you want to get into early positions where you're going to challenge a lightly armored vehicle and make that 3700 DPM really go to work for you the best you can. That's the best way to play this tank. Get into a position early where you're going to be able to make it hurt really bad for a lightly armored enemy tank, and then abuse the position that you gain out of it. If you need a light tank to complete the light tank sets of the campaigns, you're probably pretty good with this thing right here. You have a good combination of spotting and damage, which does factor into some of those missions. But would I get this tank if I'm looking to make credits as a free-to-play player? Maybe not. I think there's some better options free-to-play to get credits. I think you're probably going to like maybe the KV4 Kozlovsky, or maybe the T103 better to make credits at this tier, out of the Bond store, that is. But if you're looking for a light tank to just complete some missions, I really don't think you can go wrong with this guy. I've had some great success completing the light tank missions with this thing, and you can really be surprised with how this gun works. Let me load up a game here and see if we can have some success. Alright, so I'm thinking, with the m4190, I'm going to try to take a position up here after taking a quick spotting round, and seeing if I can pump HE into the back of whatever's turning around to take mid. Let's see what I can do. The even 90 is going to outspot that for the most part. Get a good pen on the WZ there for 353 damage. The HE shells on this tank are an absolute blessing. You're going to be able to go through most of whatever you want. Here's the IS-3. I'm going to do a quick position switch. Oh, he's on the other side. Totally fine. The Carnarvon, however, is not. See if I can spot him. No problem. Let's push up here, swap back into an HE shell, back to an AP shell for the AMPT. Gonna just see if I get it spotted here off 6 cents. Dice AMX 5100. Yep, spotted. I think I got spotted by the ELC going by. Let's see. Real waste of a heat shell there, but I didn't have a chance to switch it to an HE shell at either point during this. So that's fine. That's fine. We're going to switch back to AP right now because I'd rather operate at a profit. Let's see if I can sneak one into the 5100. No. Let's see if he comes around here. No. Okay, the WZ-132 is coming around. Let's see. No shots there. I'd rather not get spotted out in the open. I'm gonna try and work around the fact that they don't have anybody mid here. See if I can sneak a shot this way. Proxy spot on Nebraska. I'm gonna fall back on that. Good. Get some shots in on the Brask. Hopefully my team can wipe them. Not quite. That's good though. Lose a lot of hit points on that trade. Oh, the 5120 is on my bid. Yeah, I'm gonna need to heal the gunner there. Yeah, we're falling back. For sure falling back. I have the ISU-152 at the back of the map, hoping he can help me out. Oh shit. Hoping he can help me out. I need to break the engagement though. I'm spotted again, presumably by the even 90 with the bat chat at mid. We're gonna fall back and try and use our camo and spotting range to our advantage with the ISU. I'm gonna tell him that I'm with him, and hopefully that means that he will stay with me and help me out. Does he have the... Yeah, he's got the BL. This used to be the BL-10. I don't think it is anymore. to remain unspotted right now. Actually going to turn my tank around in case I have to run. Let's see. Now I have a commander's vision system, so I'm thinking I'm going to be able to spot the AMX through the bushes. Hoping. Anyway, we have a pretty commanding lead here. Gonna take city. So let's see if I can get a spot off, and it looks like they're falling back from the AMX. So let me push up slowly, see what I can see, and it looks like we're gonna spin and try to push up here. We're gonna have the Barask. He's one hit though, so I'm gonna load a high explosive shell, and if I can dump something into his tracks, I can do that. Otherwise, we probably should have loaded AP if that's not the case. Let's push up. We have the AMVT to worry about right now. Although it looks like he's relocated. I'm going to reload AP with an intuition switch and push up into the bushes. There's the AMVT. Beautiful moving shot. Let's push up. And the Skoda's going to be a one hit. Is he looking at me? Oh, I wish I knew. There's the Skoda. Yeah, he's looking at me right now. I'll settle here, just staying alive. Kind of 1-2 engagement. And there we go. 2.5K combined, not too bad. Good win. Got 2 kills. Should be some good experience here. And yeah, second tier mastery badge, taking home a spotter medal. That's good. Yeah, we'll take that to the bank. Spotter medal, 1900 spotting, 2 kills, 815 damage. The AG shells on this tank are awesome. You guys will learn that if you buy it. I recommend spending your bonds on this tank, and I think some improved equipment really makes the difference on this guy. Definitely a fun time though.